You are listening to the Scriptures for America Worldwide Broadcasting Network with Pastor Peter J. Peters, made possible by the tithes and offerings of the faithful. If you would like to be one of those who help to get needed truths out to others, send your support to Scriptures for America, P.O. Box 766, LaPorte, Colorado, 80535. That's Scriptures for America, P.O. Box 766, LaPorte, Colorado, 80535, and pay a visit to our website, www.scripturesforamerica.org. That's scripturesforamerica.org. At our website, we broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And remember, too, the live evening broadcast at our website with Pastor Peter Peters, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, 8 to 9 Central, 7 to 8 Mountain, and 6 to 7 Pacific. That program is live, controversial with guests and call-ins, and taboo subjects not acceptable in mainstream media. That's at www.scripturesforamerica.org. Should you go there on Sunday mornings, 10:30 a.m. Mountain Time, you'll see and hear Pastor Peter's Sunday morning church service. And when you write, why not ask for a free copy of the Scriptures for America Dragon Slayer newsletter magazine? Again, our address is Scriptures for America, P.O. Box 766, LaPorte, Colorado, 80535. And now, back to our program.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Pastor Pete Peters, and this message contains an interview that I had with Texe on our Truth for the Times television broadcast. We did a Truth for the Times television broadcast interview with Texe, the author of the book, Big Sister is Watching You. That book is available from this ministry for an $11 offering. The mailing address is Scriptures for America, P.O. Box 766, LaPorte, Colorado, 80535. In the interview, you are going to hear the entire Truth for the Times television broadcast, including the intro and the outro. Now here's the program.
It's time for Truth for the Times with Pastor Peter J. Peters. Truth for the Times will give you new insight, knowledge, and understanding of the times. This program may not be politically correct, but it is biblically correct. You've heard the lies and deceptions of the day. Now it's time for the truth. However, we must warn you, due to the nature of truth and man, this program could be offensive, shocking, and even frightening. But remember, the truth sets free and changeth not. And this Truth for the Times broadcast could very well change your life. So take time for this Truth for the Times broadcast with Pastor Peter J. Peters.
Welcome to this Truth for the Times broadcast. We have a special guest. I think you're going to be pleased with the truths that he's giving out in this most needed time in America for people to understand what's going on. And the truth is, and it's time someone says it, women seem to be running the whole show these days. And Isaiah had a statement to say concerning that. In Isaiah, we read in Isaiah chapter 3 these words, verse 12. O my people, their oppressors are children, and women rule over them. End of quote. Now, there's nothing new under the sun, and I know some of you ladies might at first be upset, but don't get upset. Remember that you can never be anything greater than what God intended for you to be. And God intended for women to be women and men to be men. And He has a plan, an order, if you will, for society. Now, if you watch these Truth for the Times broadcasts, you know that quite frequently Pastor Peters talks about the New World Order, pointing out that there's nothing new about it. Now, order is something that happens as a result of law. Quite often we hear people talk about law and order. Without law, you have no order. And when you have God's law, you have God's order. But when you have a humanist mentality that begins to replace God's laws with man's law, his way of thinking, you go from God's order to man's order. The only thing is man likes to call it new, but there's nothing new about it. It's so old, it's rode out of the Garden of Eden on a swayback unicorn. There's nothing new about man's order. And so it is, there is nothing new under the sun, Solomon said. Isaiah said, women and children rule over them, and it seems like that's the way it is today. And we're going to be talking about feminism, goddess worship, as we visit with our very special guest, Texe Mars from Texas. Welcome, Texe.
Pete, so good to be with you.
Well, you're a famed author, and it's great to have you, and it's a real honor to have you here. How many books have you authored?
Well, I suppose about 35 books now, 35, 36. Sort of lost track of them over the years. But, Pastor Peters, I think my newest book, Big Sister is Watching You, is probably the most fascinating book that I've ever written. And, of course, it's causing a lot of waves now, as you can imagine. A lot of people angry. But I think God's people will understand the truth behind the book.
Where did you come up with the title, Big Sister is Watching Over You?
Well, you know, the cover of the book gives you a sort of a hint to who we're going to be talking about, the kind of people. Hillary Clinton on the cover. Big Sister is Watching You. Well, most people will remember the very terrifying novel, 1984 by George Orwell, about Big Brother and the police state. Well, it's an interesting thing, but when I began to really look at what was happening with Hillary and Bill Clinton, and the people that they brought into power, Donna Shalala, Janet Reno, Madeleine Albright, Roberta Ochtenberg, and all these other radical, lesbian, anti-Christian type women, I realized we had a different type of situation. Yes, we had the Big Brother aspects. We have the terrifying gathering together of a police state. We know that from what happened to the 86 innocent Branch Davidians who were burned to death after being tormented for 56 days. But really, it's a feminizing of Big Brother. I call Hillary Clinton, and I don't mean this to be cute or anything else, but it's a true thing. I call her Big Brother in drag. That's really what we have here. And I think there's more bloodshed on the way because these are ruthless women. They are Marxist. As I said, they're anti-American, anti-Constitution. And so there are changes. They've only been in office a year, just a few months over a year. But there are fantastic things on the way. One of the ways we can understand this type of feminist Marxism and anti-Christian behavior is to look at Hillary Clinton. She is Big Sister personified. But this book is more than about Big Sister. It's about the system of total totalitarian control that is being set up today here in America.
Well, now, it doesn't look like Hillary is necessarily satisfied with just being the wife of a president. You were doing some recent reviewing of the facts, and it looks like some even would go so far as to have her be president.
I believe so. Not too long ago we had, maybe we'll look at the next slide here on TV. It was an interesting thing that the New Yorker has come out with a feature article. It's on 30,000 words. Now, you have to understand the New Yorker is owned by the same interests, the New World Order interests, that propelled Bill and Hillary Clinton into power. But in this article, the White House is right on top of Hillary's head. In other words, it's what's in her mind. It's what she conceives. And I'm convinced that Hillary Rodham Clinton's, her intention is to be president. Now, Pete, I want people to understand, she runs the White House today. Her staff, her personal staff, is larger than that of Vice President Al Gore's. It's in the West Wing of the White House. There's never been a First Lady, so-called, and she's not a First Lady. I don't call her a First Lady. She's First Politician of America. Here, we're talking about a crooked financial scam artist, a lawyer. In 1987 and 88, and I show this in my book, she was chairperson of a Marxist organization called the New World Foundation. What is the New World Foundation that Hillary was in charge of? We're not talking about youthful indiscretions. We're talking about while her husband was governor of the state of Arkansas. Well, first of all, the New World Foundation funded the National Lawyers Guild, a communist lawyers association. The New World Foundation gave money to the El Salvadorian communist guerrillas. We're talking about death, bloodshed down in Central America. She helped to fund Yasser Arafat, the PLO terrorist. And yet her husband is doing great favors for the nation of Israel today. So there's some kind of a schizophrenic situation there we could get into, would be sort of interesting. But the fact is that Hillary Clinton is the power behind the throne. But who is Hillary Clinton? There's no doubt that she has some very powerful and very strange people behind her. Worse than that, though, she has brought in a network of radical feminists with her. These are women, Pastor Peters, that Hillary has known for years. Bill actually is their servant. There's no doubt. There's, for example, a woman in the White House named Susan Thomases. She's a gruff feminist, pro-lesbian, perhaps a lesbian herself, New York attorney. And did you know that you can't even get through to Bill Clinton in his office, nor to Hillary, unless Susan Thomases says it's okay? She runs the White House. She's Hillary's best friend. And some rumors say that they're much closer than you can imagine. And I say that because many of the most radical gay organizations claim that Hillary is a lesbian. During the last gay march on Washington, April of 1993, I saw it myself on C-SPAN. One of the spokespersons, now imagine 300,000 of the strangest people, remember that march? Transvestites, drag queens, homosexual perverts, pedophiles, 300,000 strong marched in Washington, D.C. Their leaders were invited to the White House by Bill Clinton. He and Hillary endorsed the gay march on Washington. So what happened there? Well, first of all, Larry Kramer, the head of ACT UP, got up. ACT UP, one of the most radical of the gay groups. Right. These people throw condoms and blood, sprinkle it in churches, etc. They're vicious people. Larry Kramer, the head of ACT UP, said of Donna Shalala, a longtime Hillary friend, she's now Secretary of Health and Human Services, he says, Donna Shalala, we know you're a lesbian, and you know you're a lesbian, so why don't you just come out of the closet? Queer Nation, another horrible, just a heinous lesbian group and homosexual group. They, when Janet Reno was chosen as the Attorney General of the United States, they held a press conference on the very steps of the Justice Department. Queer Nation. They said, Janet Reno, you're a lesbian. We have 20 lesbian activists from the Miami area who will testify that they know you as a lesbian. So why don't you come out of the closet? You see, the homosexuals are angry. They want all of these Clintonites to come out of the closet so that they can be approved by the nation, so that they can look better. Now, here's what's amazing, though. One of the spokespersons for that gay march in Washington got up. This was on C-SPAN, but just tried to get the tape. I had a good friend, Dr. Stanley Monteith, from out of California. He tried to get the 2-minute segment on C-SPAN where this gay lesbian spokesperson, before tens of thousands of people, stood up and said, I want to tell you a secret. Hillary is a lesbian like us. What she said was, quote, we now have a first lady in the White House that we can blank with. Well, I'm not going to give the blank word over this Christian program on the air. Absolutely. The very next day, that same woman and other homosexual lesbian leaders were invited to the White House for lunch.
Well, there's the point.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, if I was in that position, that would be the last thing I'd ever do with
exactly.
sexual perverts.
And not only that, it was only 2 months later.
Their last supper.
It would have been their last supper, I understand. Yeah, I would have hated to see Pete Peters after somebody said something like that about his wife. Well, you see, only 2 months later, President Bill Clinton sent a letter to Urvasia Vade, head of the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force. And I talk about this in my book, Big Sister's Watching You. He did this. Now, this letter from Bill Clinton was read at their national convention in San Francisco, the Gay and Lesbian Task Force. Bill Clinton said, I want to thank you for making me president. If it had not been for the support of the gay community, I would not be president. This was read at this gay convention. And you know, he told the truth, because they gave him over $3 million for his campaign. So this is an example of the feminization and the lesbianization of America. Because some of the most powerful leaders in Washington, the leader, for example, the ambassador to the United Nations, Madeleine Albright, Donna Shalala, the head of the Environmental Protection Agency, Carol Browner, all of these women have incredible powers, even police state powers. Roberta Ochtenberg, Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Did you know that she recently sent a letter to all of the telephone companies in America ordering them to remove the cross and other religious symbols from our yellow pages and our telephone books?
I had no idea.
That's right. That just came out from HUD. Roberta Ochtenberg is responsible for it.
I want to pause here and talk to my audience a little bit. This book is well worth reading and having in your library. Big Sister is watching you. Texe, how much is this book?
It's $12. It's a little bit over, I think it's about 201 pages. $12, and I think it's like $1.20 postage and handling, so total of around $13 for the book.
I'd recommend it, ladies and gentlemen. I have it in my library. In fact, I interviewed Mr. Mars on our shortwave radio broadcasting that covers all of America on a nightly basis, and it is so jam-packed full of fascinating information, just like our guest is showing that he's like a walking encyclopedia here. I'm amazed, and you're going to be amazed, too, with some more truths that are coming right after this break, so stay with us, will you?
America the Conquered, the book serving as a wake-up call to a sleeping people. The prophet Isaiah cried, "Awake, awake," to a people and a nation asleep to their conquest. America the Conquered by Pastor Peter J. Peters tells how, why, and proves it so. It's only for those who can face the truth. Available for an $8 offering. Write to Truth for the Times, P.O. Box 766, LaPorte, Colorado, 80535. Also order the Truth for the Times introductory offer. It's a 60-minute cassette tape by Pastor Peters. With it comes a special coupon track allowing you access to new insight and truth. Plus, a cassette tape catalog listing over 500 messages by Pastor Peters. Write to Truth for the Times, P.O. Box 766, LaPorte, Colorado, 80535.
Texe, we know some of these fascinating things about Hillary, but do we know what her future agenda is? What do you think she's got in plan?
I'm convinced that the money men behind Bill and Hillary Clinton almost have Bill as a stalking horse. I think Hillary is going to be their ultimate candidate for president. And I think there are plans already afoot. There's a Hillary campaign election committee that's been set up in California. And this is amazing. But in addition to New Yorker magazine, this very week, this is USA Today. Hillary for president, not a bad idea, says Joe Urschel. So I want folks to look at this. Hillary for president, not a bad idea. Now, interestingly enough, USA Today, probably one of the nation's most read newspapers. The only thing that could equal it maybe is the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, but no doubt USA Today with great power. It was also a liberal publication, I might add.
Right.
Here's what Mr. Urschel says. He says, if First Lady wants to succeed Bill, she should, and the sooner, the better. Well, maybe they're not willing to wait for 4 years or even 8 years. Maybe something is going to happen to Bill. I mean, I'm not suggesting, but it looks a little ominous there for Bill Clinton. I think the drum beats are already there. You see, Napoleon Bonaparte probably taught us a lot. Remember, Napoleon would make everyone that he knew, he would make them, give them a title of nobility. Hillary is running the White House right now. She and these women run Bill Clinton. But I think she wants the title that goes along with that. She wants the fame. She wants the power. The real question, though, is what does she believe? Who is Hillary Clinton?
Right. We really don't know that much about her, do we?
We don't. Now, I've gone all the way back to her school days and studied Hillary Clinton. If this woman has been tagged to become president of the United States, and I believe Either there's going to be an assassination in office, and I pray that there's not. I mean, who do we have in the wings? Al Gore and Hillary Clinton next. We certainly don't want anything like that to happen. But whether it's very soon or 96 or to bring in the new millennium, I think there's some plans afoot for Hillary to become president. I really do. Or maybe an even greater position. Robert Mueller, who was an occultist and was the Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations, all 39 of its directorates worked for him, recently put out a book. I believe it's what I would call an Illuminati type sponsored book. It's entitled First Lady of the World. Maybe they've got even greater plans for this feminine occult power. Recently, Hillary revealed that she has a guru, believe it or not. We know about Maharishi Mahesh Yogi coming over from India and such, but her guru is a man named Michael Lerner. Now, he's a Jew, and he puts out this publication called Tikkun. And interestingly enough, look at this issue, Pete. It's not just the economy, stupid. You remember Bill and Hillary, their slogan back for Mr. Carville, their campaign advisor during the last presidential campaign, they had little buttons called "It's the economy, stupid." In other words, let's bamboozle the American people by telling them everything we're going to give them financially. It's the economy, stupid. That was the actual slogan of the Democrat Party. Well, now Mr. Lerner, who is Hillary Clinton's guru.
Now, you're saying like literal guru?
Well, he is a literal guru in that she actually swoons over his ideas. She had a meeting with him at the White House.
And she's called him guru.
Yeah, well, what she said was, quote, "Are you my mouthpiece or what?" In other words, he is Hillary's mouthpiece. Now, she has admitted that last year in Austin, Texas, she gave her famous politics of meaning speech. What did it mean? Well, people wanted to know. 13,000 women were there. Bill Moyers, you know, the sort of the New Age occult guru himself of PBS television, was there. Ann Richards, the liberal governor of Texas, was there. And Hillary said this. She says, "What does it mean, my politics of meaning?" She said it means a new way of thinking, and it means the remolding of society. Well, I wanted to know, who is this guy that gave her this politics of meaning, this remolding of society? Let me tell you a little bit about Michael Lerner. First of all, he was a University of California at Berkeley professor, one of those 60s hippies.
Mm-hmm.
He got married, but let me tell you how he did it. He didn't even want a rabbi or a pastor to marry. He hated all of those people. He married himself. In other words, he married a woman, but he officiated at his own wedding. He officiated. He had a wedding cake, and the words on it were "Smash Monogamy." Smash Monogamy. He asked to be pictured, have a personal portrait made of himself, and behind was the Soviet Union's hammer and sickle flag. They said, "What did you do that for?" He said, "I dig Karl Marx." He's a Marxist. Now, one of the things that Hillary was most impressed about Mr. Lerner, her guru, is that Mr. Lerner says that what he wants to see established in America, in every work center, at every factory, at every plant, at every site of business, in every office, there needs to be a cell created. And the workers would meet so many times a week to have sensitivity sessions.
You're talking about a cell, like in a communist cell.
Absolutely. He didn't use the word communist. See, that's out.
Right.
These people hide. They call it economic democracy now. Or they're really socialist communists, though. But he says what we need are these employer groups or sensitivity sessions. So it's really a brainwashing propaganda thing. So this is how they want to get everyone to thinking their way, a new way of thinking. Forced meetings in the workplace. And I think it's a scary thing. Now, but let's go even further with Hillary Clinton, Pete. Let's talk about when she was in high school, the influences back during the 60s that she had. Now, it's a very interesting thing. Here is another publication put out by Hillary fans. In fact, these people even started the Hillary Clinton fan club, the Hillary Clinton Quarterly. In Now, some very interesting things here in the Hillary Clinton Quarterly, but one of them is a biographical sketch of Hillary. Now, I want people to understand these are Hillary's friends. They even say in here that they would like for her to be president, if not maybe goddess of the world. I mean, they probably would like to go further. But it's an interesting thing. They talk about the history of Hillary and the influences on her life. And they state that as a young woman, her youth pastor there in Chicago at the Park Ridge Methodist Church, a man named Don Jones. Now, he didn't teach them about Jesus, the Messiah, who could save you. He didn't teach about being born again. He taught them about Jesus, the revolutionary, almost a Marxist revolutionary. He brought Hillary to meet a man one time.
Now, before you tell the people what man that she met, because you told me before we went on the air, it absolutely was fascinating to me, because I've read his writings, and he was a well-known individual in the 60s. But I was going to stop you there because, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to make sure to stay with us after this break that's coming up. This Truth for the Times broadcast is aired in many places for 1 hour, and some places only for a half hour. And since we're coming up to the half-hour mark, I've got to tell my listening audience that are watching us wherever this is aired for just 30 minutes that you can order this book. Big Sister is Watching You. Texe Mars is the author and our guest in this program, and the book is as jam-packed full of information as Texe is even showing us he is, and that I'm just absolutely astounded with all this information. And I highly recommend the book. Big Sister is Watching You. I really like what you said. Big Brother in Drag.
Big Brother in Drag.
You can have this book and take advantage of sitting down and a chance right now while Big Sister still lats you, so to speak. And I'm being facetious, because let me tell you something. I am very confident that men are going to rise up once again and be men in this country. Jesus once said, "You're the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its saltiness, how will it be made salty again?" And then he sort of answered that question by saying this. He said, "It's good for nothing but to be thrown out into the street and trampled under the foot of man." And you see, God has a way of causing his people to get salty again when they start getting walked on. Only thing that bothers me, it's a little humiliating to have these high heel marks up and down my spine with all these gals that are up there in these high positions acting as little goddesses. And if you want to know where Hillary got some of her training, right after this break, you're going to find out one of the activist leaders in the 60s, a man who, frankly, I've respected in certain ways. I've read his book, but he's on the wrong side. When I'm saying wrong side, when it comes to the Word of God and a belief in Christ and the kingdom of Christ. But this is Hillary's teacher, and Texe is going to tell us about that right after this break. So you be sure to stay with us, because we got more great, good material coming. And Texe, I really appreciate you giving what you've got. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you just stay with us, we're coming right up to the top of the hour. We'll be back right after this break, and we'll be telling you who taught Hillary Clinton some of the things she's learned. So stay with us, okay?
Pastor Peters will be right back with more Truth for the Times. Have you ordered your Truth for the Times introductory offer? It's a 60-minute cassette message by Pastor Peters. It will introduce you to a host of new and life-changing truths. This tape comes with a special coupon track, giving you privileged access to a treasure of new knowledge and understanding. Plus, you get a cassette tape catalog listing over 500 messages by Pastor Peters. Write to Truth for the Times, P.O. Box 766, LaPorte, Colorado, 80535. Enclose a $2 offering for postage and handling. By the way, have you read America the Conquered by Pastor Peters? If not, you should. Available for an $8 offering. Write to Truth for the Times, P.O. Box 766, LaPorte, Colorado, 80535.
Let's get right on with it. You got a lot of material to cover, and I want you to tell the people about one of her tutors back there in the 60s.
I think it's very fascinating that Hillary Clinton was brought to meet a man named Saul Alinsky. Now Saul Alinsky, and you've read his writings and you've done research in this area. Saul Alinsky was a Jewish radical who believed in organizing communities and really rousing up the people. Maybe he was a rabble rouser, you might say, at this time.
His one book is called Rules for Radicals.
Rules for Radicals. Now, what is sort of sad about that book is that Mr. Alinsky, in the early editions, the book was dedicated to Lucifer. To Lucifer. Now, whether that was...
I've got that edition because he says it's dedicated to the first radical.
The first radical.
And then he elaborated how he adored him. And it was Lucifer.
Amazing. Well, Hillary was really taken with Alinsky's writings. Two things that Alinsky did was very important. First of all, he said that you could use the poor and you could use churches to get what you want. He was the original power to the people, but it was a manipulative type power. Now, Hillary was so taken with Saul Alinsky that it changed her whole life. She went later, as you know, she was from a very wealthy family, the Rodham family. Very ritzy, very, very rich. She was sent to an exclusive women's college, Wellesley College. She was so taken with this guy who had dedicated his book to Lucifer, Saul Alinsky, that her senior thesis at Wellesley was based on his book, Rules for Radicals. Then later, Alinsky was so impressed with Hillary that he invited her to go on tour with him. And she did indeed go to a couple of places, and right there at the podium talked to people with Saul Alinsky. Now, Hillary is absolutely, I'm convinced, an occultist. Let me give you two examples from my book, Big Sister is Watching You. And I think it comes all the way from those early days with Saul Alinsky, who dedicated his own book to Lucifer. First of all, in my book, I have a picture of her with a Native American, all I can say is he's a witch doctor. And here is Hillary, an actual photograph. She has her arms crossed very reverently, her eyes are bowed, and this Native American Indian witch doctor has his hands over as he's invoking the four spirits of the earth to come into her and to bless her. This was right prior to one of her health care committee meetings, so it makes you wonder what kind of health care we're going to be given that the demon spirits have approved. And a second instance that I talk about in my book, Big Sister is Watching You, is Hillary's own admission, and I think this was absolutely a stunning thing, that she has a spirit guide. Hillary herself, before a group of, I call them the glitterati, the Barbra Streisands and the Hollywood Broadway set, they had a big gala, fundraising gala in New York City, Pete. They were raising money to erect a statue to their idol, Eleanor Roosevelt, in a park in New York City. She has a spirit guide. Hillary herself, before a group of, I call them the glitterati, the Barbra Streisands and the Hollywood Broadway set, they had a big gala, fundraising gala in New York City, Pete. They were raising money to erect a statue to their idol, Eleanor Roosevelt, in a park in New York City. Hillary got up, and the whole place became teary-eyed. All of these glittering women, you see, they all became teary-eyed when Hillary began to tell them that Eleanor was her role model. But more than that, she said, I talked with Eleanor Roosevelt even today.
So Eleanor Roosevelt was her spirit, or is her spirit guide?
Hillary explained that when she first began to visualize and to meditate and to call on Eleanor Roosevelt, that at first, in her mind, Eleanor just stood there mute. But after a while, she said, Eleanor actually began to speak back to her and talk to her. Hillary actually said that Eleanor Roosevelt began to speak in her own words, and that Eleanor was her chief political advisor. Hillary said if it hadn't have been for the guidance of Eleanor Roosevelt in spirit, from the spirit world, I would not have been able to have made it through the last political campaign. Now, I think that's pretty astonishing.
Very interesting.
You see, this New Age goddess worship by Hillary Rodham Clinton. So there is an occultic aspect. Now, you say, well, Texe, what do the occultists think of Hillary and Bill? Well, I think it's very mutual. You know, right after the election, this magazine came out. Now, this magazine, Green Egg, is representative, Pete, of many different occultic magazines. It's called Green Egg.
Oh, there it is.
Now look at the cover of this. Again, representative. What do you have on the front cover? Well, you have a woman, a strong woman. She's with a peacock type of Native American Indian headdress. She's the goddess. Now, look at her right hand. Remember, the Bible talks about the mark of the beast. Here's the all-seeing eye in the right hand of the goddess. The green egg itself means the green egg of fertility, of the great goddess of the ancients. Now,
this is sort of an all-cultist New Age type publication.
Oh, absolutely. And there are many. Magical Blend magazine, and of course there's New Age Journal, and so forth. We're not talking about now about holistic health or anything like that.
Right.
We're talking about deep occultic things religiously. In fact, this is a witchcraft magazine.
Things that deal with witchcraft going all the way back to the days of Babylon.
Exactly. Oh, well, they call out for the names of the goddess Ishtar and Ashtar and Semiramis and Venus and all of the other names of the goddesses of the past, Cybele, and so forth. Now, what is interesting about this witchcraft issue is it's the 25th anniversary special. So this is, like you were saying when the program began, this is nothing new. What is new is that they say that the Clinton administration is the best administration ever for witchcraft and occultism. And let me go one step further. You know, one of your books is an expose of the environmental movement. Right. The truth about what's really behind the environmental movement. Well, I'm going to prove your point. One of the feature articles in here is a review of Al Gore's book, Earth and the Balance. Vice President Al Gore, I call him Spotted Al Gore. And it says in here that according to the witches and the pagans, it is a fantastic book. In fact, they say that they would not change one word of his book. It is perfect for goddess worshippers and pagans and witches. And it is, because Al Gore says in his book, he defines God, and I'm going to quote Al Gore. He says, quote, nature in its fullest is God. Al Gore also says that the mother goddess religion is back, and it's good. It's earth-honoring. He says there are several religions that are earth-honoring. The Hindu religion, the Buddhist religion, the goddess religion, the Native American Indian religion. He said, but there is one religion that is very, very dangerous. He says, even though I am a Southern Baptist, and of course he's not, but that's just what he claims. He says, I am different than most Christians because they have an Armageddon mentality. They do not love our Mother Earth. They see a world crisis as developing and eventually a recreation of a new earth and new heavens by God. He says this is dangerous delusional thinking. He says that's heresy. So you see, if you believe what the Bible says, that's heresy, according to Al Gore. But it's so fascinating that they quote a number of pagan and witchcraft experts in this magazine, and all of them are very commendatory of Hillary and Bill Clinton, and they should be. Now, how is this relating, Pete, to what's going on about us in our schools, for example, with our children? I came across something, and you and I were looking at this right before the program began.
Yes, the goddess worship.
The goddess worship. Here's an illustration I think is very interesting. Now, before we tell them where we got this, Pete, we ought to take a look at it. There's 6 pedestals in this pyramidal-shaped structure.
You can't quite tell with that scene there unless you look at closer, but these are women.
Yes, they're women. They're priestesses to the great goddess.
Right. And
to the great sun god of the ancients. And of course, Lucifer is basically the sun god of the ancients. Many, many different names for that sun god. The Hindus even worship him today as Agni or Ajni. Their third eye on the forehead of the Hindu priest, when they put that little bit of paste, red, white, whatever, according to their rank in their religious structure, is actually the fire eye, the all-seeing eye of Agni or Ajni, their great fire god. Remember the Bible about Marduk, The Philistines had their fire god and their goddess. It's the same religion back again today. But now, this illustration that we're just showing folks now is not out of some Hindu textbook. It's not out of some goddess witchcraft magazine. It comes from a teacher's guide in the Fort Worth, Texas Independent School District. It's part of their Montessori training program. That actually came from Italy in the first place. It's from the International Foundation of Montessori in Italy. I'm not saying that every Montessori teacher is an occultist, but certainly this is an occultic illustration. And you know, I'm going to just reveal something here too. I don't want to give their names, but two of the top administrators in the Fort Worth, Texas School District came to see me, and they said, "Tex, we're going to put our career on the line. We want to tell you what's going on in the Fort Worth, Texas schools, because it's spreading around the nation, and it's even going into Sunday schools." And they gave me some examples of this Montessori instruction. But here, right out of a teacher's guide, this goddess worship, this elevation of the pagan religion. And this is for the teachers, not in the kids' things. But you see, they're first getting to the teachers and having special classes. And I said, where did this come from? And they said, well, you see, this is the teacher's guide, and we've been told to teach the teachers these things. And they said, we're fed up with it. And by the way, neither one of those women are with the Fort Worth School District now. They both went to see the superintendent, and it wasn't too long until they were out. So I haven't checked recently, but perhaps this is still going on in the Fort Worth Independent School District.
Of course, if you had a similar scene of Jesus Christ and all mankind bowing down to him, you can imagine it wouldn't last very long in the schools.
Oh no. Christianity is out. Right. But you can teach all of this goddess junk and such. It's an example of what's going on. And I think part of that also is this homosexual movement. Here again, we have the blending of the sexes. The calling of God, instead of a he, a she, the great goddess religion. And of course, all of the women that Hillary has brought into power with her.
That's one thing that was interesting in your book, is the fact that you just go page after page of how many women have been pulled into government positions. We've never had this before in the history of our country.
That's right.
And women that are not reputable women. And I know, ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be some ladies out there watching saying, well, Pastor Peters is a male chauvinist pig. Well, let me tell you something. It takes a female chauvinist sow to see one. And it's about time for us to start standing up for these witches, and that's what they amount to.
They do. You know, it's so interesting, Pete. I've been on over 200 talk shows talking about this. Most of them are secular, not even Christian shows. But it's very fascinating. I'll always get this accusation: "Oh, you must hate women."
Right.
You're a woman basher. That's why you wrote this book about Hillary Rodham Clinton, these women, big sisters watching you. You hate women, don't you? And I tell them, I said, you know, it's interesting. That's a sexist remark. I mean, it's okay to bash men. You see, I've written 35 books, mainly exposing corruption in high places. I wrote a book about the Skull and Bones Society and the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations, an expose of George Bush.
Of all those books, were you ever called a male basher?
No, I was never called. 34 books bashing men, nobody complained. And so I told one woman, a lesbian activist who called in, she says, "You're just a woman hater." I said, you know, I write one little book out of 35 talking about women in high power, and you people come unglued. You call me a woman basher. What about the other 34 books? I said, in fact, I think it's a shame I've only written 1/35 of all my books about women. I said, in fact, I'm very embarrassed that I haven't written more. I should have written at least half of them about women. But I'm only 1 out of 35, and you complain. So I try to make light of it. And it is funny. It's humorous how they will come against you.
I know this
in situations like this.
I'm going to bring this up because I guess it's just something that's bothered me. But when Bill Clinton was inaugurated, they had this woman come up, a black woman, get up there and tell a poem. Now, I don't know who this black woman was, but I was so embarrassed for the nation because I'm telling you, children could write better poems than this poem. Nothing that rhymed. It was embarrassing. And then I find out you've done research as to who she is. And right after this break, I want to pick up on that because, and then go on where we want. It'll shock them.
Oh, I'll tell you.
And it's comical. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're enjoying the show, and our guest with Texe Mars is our guest, and appreciate you being with us. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back, and you'll find out who that black woman was that was saying the poem about the rocks and trees, and ended up by saying good morning. You remember that in the inauguration, and how Bill Clinton got up and shook her hand or hugged her? I don't remember exactly which. That'll be coming up next, right after this break, so stay with us.
America the Conquered, the book serving as a wake-up call to a sleeping people. The prophet Isaiah cried, "Awake, awake," to a people and a nation asleep to their conquest. America the Conquered by Pastor Peter J. Peters tells how, why, and proves it so. It's only for those who can face the truth. Available for an $8 offering. Write to Truth for the Times, P.O. Box 766, LaPorte, Colorado, 80535. Also order the Truth for the Times introductory offer. It's a 60-minute cassette tape by Pastor Peters. With it comes a special coupon track allowing you access to new insight and truth. Plus, a cassette tape catalog listing over 500 messages by Pastor Peters. Write to Truth for the Times, P.O. Box 766, LaPorte, Colorado, 80535.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and I told you we're going to start off now after this break with who that woman was saying the poem, and it just seemed kind of bothering me because I thought, this is embarrassing. This is supposed to represent America. People all over the world is watching this woman. Who is she? And then when I had you as a guest on our shortwave radio program that reaches all of America nightly, you told me. So I want you to tell the audience. It's fascinating.
Sure. Maya Angelou.
That's her name?
Well, she says that's her name, but that's not her name. Her name is Margaret Wilson. She's been called Margaret Donnell, Margaret Smith. The basic thing to know, her name is not Maya Angelou. That's a Hindu goddess name that she just borrowed. Maya Angelou has a long track record. I found it very humorous when I found out that she was going to give this, it's really a New Age occultic pantheistic type of a poetry, sort of the feminist Robert Frost for our generation. She is a longtime friend of Hillary's. Now, the reason I knew about her is having studied New Age occultism and subscribing to all of these magazines for research and such. I recall coming across a magazine called Magical Blend, a very glossy occultic magazine, which had an interview of Miss Angelou. And in the interview, it was very interesting, and you'll like this, Pete. In the interview, Maya Angelou talks about her experiences when she demonstrated against the U.S. flag. You see, she was Malcolm X's girlfriend. Remember Malcolm X?
Yes.
Well, she was one of his girlfriends.
I didn't know that.
He had many. So they had a little thing going. And she went over to Ghana in Africa, and she demonstrated against the U.S. flag. And one of the things she had said in this that infuriated me in this occultic magazine interview, she said that as she began to talk, the two Marines that were hoisting the U.S. flag at the embassy there in Accra, Ghana, that they got so nervous from all of the demonstrators screaming epithets and, I guess, profanities at them. She says they almost dropped the U.S. flag on the ground, and she thought that was just real humorous, I suppose. Isn't it interesting that Bill Clinton also demonstrated against the U.S. flag over in Oxford, England, and Moscow, in the Soviet Union, and now he picks the same kind of person to give this bit of poetry at his inaugural ceremony.
Very interesting.
Maya Angelou went on from being Malcolm X's girlfriend and a demonstrator against the U.S. flag to become a prostitute and the madam of a house of prostitution. She was a madam of a house of prostitution and a prostitute and a stripper. In fact, I have a photo in my files of her as a stripper. And the stripper...
should have brought it with you, showed it on TV.
Well, I thought this is a Christian program. I'd be too embarrassed. I hate even taking it out of my files. But see, you see, people wouldn't believe it unless you had graphic, and that's very graphic evidence of when she was a stripper.
I would only show it depending on what it was.
I know. You'd probably show this view and that view, and people can put the composite together in their minds. Maya Angelou, you see, just like Bill Clinton claims to be a Southern Baptist, Maya does too. In fact, one of the more liberal Southern Baptist universities, Wake Forest, North Carolina, has given her a job. They've made Maya Angelou, as far as I know, she didn't even finish high school. Maybe she did. I can't find any proof. Nevertheless, they've made her full professor for life. Who did? Wake Forest University, a Southern Baptist school, made this Maya Angelou, who has a Hindu goddess name, former stripper and madam. They've made her, without any educational background, professor for life. Well, I did some investigation. I found out she doesn't teach any courses. At least she didn't by the time my book came out. She hadn't taught any courses. She doesn't do any work. Well, we decided to do some investigation. Because her name is in the college directory, she's in building such and such, room number such and such. So you send a person there to find out, and guess what? That number of her office in that building, it's a broom closet for the janitors. Well, she doesn't even show up on campus.
Well, now hold it. How do you know that that's not where she keeps her broom?
Well, you know, it's really funny you would say that. In my book, Big Sister is Watching You, I saw something very humorous. Maybe it was more than humor. Right after the inauguration, all of the women of the White House had a little party for Hillary, and they gave her a gift. This is true. A witch's hat. A witch's hat. And they said, the press is going to accuse you of being a witch anyway. We may as well give you a witch's hat. I found that sort of, maybe they know something we don't know.
Now I understand how she got to say the poem. I suspect she kept good records when she was a madam.
Yes, she may know quite a bit about Bill Clinton and others.
Well, there's others. This lady, talk about her before time runs out. This is an interesting one.
Well, all of these women that Hillary is brought on board, I want you to understand something. Hillary is in charge of appointments in the White House. There are a few people that Bill Clinton has been ordered by the Rockefeller and Associates boys at the Trilateral Commission of CFR to put on board. But basically the women who are there to redesign, remold America are Hillary's choices. One of them is this woman here. Now, this magazine, The Advocate, it says the National Gay and Lesbian News Magazine. Now, here's the gays themselves. What do they call her? The Condom Queen. Look at this picture. Now, The Advocate, this gay magazine, has an interview here. In this magazine, she talks about the pleasure of homosexual sex, how good it is, how it should be celebrated. This woman is a disgrace, Jocelyn Elders, the Surgeon General. She says
she's an embarrassment. Do you ever see her? She wears a general's outfit.
She's crazy. She's crazy as a loon. She's nutty. On her desk, she was state health director for the state of Arkansas. That's how she got to know Bill and Hillary. She actually did them a favor that I'll tell folks about in a minute. You talk about, having some dirt. I think she's going to say, Surgeon General, she knows something about Bill Clinton, something very, very bad. But in any case, she had it looked like a Christmas tree on her desk in her office as a Department of Health there in Arkansas. It was a little metal contraption, looked like a Christmas tree. But hanging on it were yellow-colored condoms. That's all that hang on it. Not Christmas tree ornaments, yellow-colored condoms. She had a little sign underneath it. She called it her Ozark rubber tree. This woman has a lot of class.
Yeah.
She is nutty as a fruitcake. She says this. She says we've got to take children as early as 2 or 3 years of age and teach them how to use condoms. 2 or 3 years of age? This is a sick woman.
And our tax dollars pay her salary.
Of course. She wants to legalize, as you know, drugs. And her own son was arrested for being a cocaine pusher just recently. I see why she wants to legalize drugs now. She says this. She says, we've taught our children what to do in the front seat of the car through driver's education. Now we need to teach them what to do in the back seat of the car. Right. This is a nutty woman. Why is she there? Well, first of all, I thought at first because she was a black American, maybe he was trying to make it, to give it a racial a tinge there in his administration. Not so. You see, there was a woman named Virginia who was a nurse anesthetist at a hospital in Little Rock. She was accused of bungling an operation, in fact, of killing a patient. There was an investigation, and during the investigation, they said that she was more interested in polishing her nails and putting on her makeup than taking care of the patients, and that's why she forgot about a patient, and the patient died on the operating room table. That woman, Virginia, just happened to be Bill Clinton's mother. But guess what? The medical examiner who investigated was fired from his job for incompetency. He exonerated Virginia Kelly, Bill Clinton's mother. But no problem. He was given another job after he was fired from that one. Guess who gave him the job? Dr. Jocelyn Elders. It was a plum job. She created it out of thin air. He became Arkansas's AIDS commissioner. AIDS commissioner for the gays.
You know, Tex, we've got about 4 minutes left, and I think we'd be amiss not to mention Janet Reno, because by the time this thing airs, Janet Reno is going to want to come and burn my church down. So let's talk about her a second.
Well, I think she already wants to burn your church down, but God's protecting you, Pete. There's no doubt about that. And we need God. We need the prayers of the folks out there to protect both our ministries, I believe.
Amen.
Janet Reno is a longtime fan of Hillary's. Janet Reno and Donna Shalala have been girlfriends from way back. I have something to reveal most folks won't know about. But it was, I think, 6 years ago that Donna Shalala, who was chancellor at the University of Wisconsin, had a bunch of lesbian and homosexual friends there. They got together with Janet Reno's homosexual friends down in Miami, Florida, and they set up a hotline for teenagers. Now, this hotline, and Janet Reno was made president of it, Donna Shalala's homosexual professors and others provided tapes. Now, when a teenager would call with a religious problem, they would play a tape for him on the hotline. Now, imagine a teenager having religious questions. They would always play a New Age occultic tape telling the teenager how to use astral travel to go into other worlds and contact the spirit beings. But also, if they had a sexual concern, if a young girl was concerned about sex, they would play a tape encouraging her to become a lesbian, saying it's okay, this sexual preference. These are the kind of tapes. A teen hotline. Well, all the parents thought it was great, a teen hotline. Doesn't Janet Reno love this community so much? She was the state attorney, of course, down in Miami, Florida. Donna Shalala and she, long-standing. But I think Janet Reno, most of all, right now, she's getting ready, her SWAT team. Did you know that she has doubled the size of the FBI SWAT team after the Branch Davidians?
After she killed those women and children.
They have doubled the size of it. They're training at the Marine base, Quantico. Marine training base out on the East Coast. She has doubled the size of the SWAT team, and I'm telling you, they're getting ready to go after Christians. And I'm not talking about the Koresh type people. They're going to go after legitimate groups. They're going to go after the Pete Peters. So we need the prayer of the folks out there.
Well, it's no wonder they want to disarm us, isn't it?
That's right, exactly.
So your records, are you of the opinion then that she's probably a lesbian?
Oh, well, she is a hardened lesbian. I give evidence by attorney Jack Thompson down in Florida. She was once found in the back seat of a car with an underage female. That's why she's now pushing pornography, trying to let pornographers go free as Attorney General. The case of Knox versus Pennsylvania, for example. She actually harassed female employees when she was state attorney down in Miami. You see, she was a harasser, just like Bill Clinton was of the women. She harassed women employees herself. So no, she is a hardened lesbian. And that's why even one of the radical gay groups, Queer Nation, told her, Janet Reno, you need to come out of the closet.
Tex, I really appreciate you giving us this information. And ladies and gentlemen, write for his book. Let's get it on the screen real fast, the address and the phone number if you want his book. Tex, thanks a lot for being with us. I think we could do a whole other program, and I appreciate you taking time to be with us now. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to come to our Heavenly Father in repentance. And I'm going to close this program, if you don't mind, with a brief prayer. Our God in heaven, be merciful and forgive us of the great sins that plague this land, and raise up, through your Spirit, Christian men to put these antichrist forces in their place once again. I pray it in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. And for all you witches watching, we're not worried. Greater is he is for us than he that is, and she is against us. See ya. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Pastor Pete Peters, and you've been listening to the audio portion of our Truth for the Times television program where we interviewed Texe Marrs, author of the book, Big Sister is Watching You. If you'd like to have that book, we are now carrying it on our book list. It's available for an $11 offering, and if you'd like